Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to tonight's final bonus. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go, and yes, folks, they do matter. Now, everyone, I've taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to tonight's night-ending bonus, shall we? Today's first fascinating encounter comes to us from Laysan National Forest in Northern California. A friend and I were playing cards on February 2nd of 1988. He wanted to take me home as he had to be up for work early. We left his apartment, and as we were driving, I brought to his attention the turnoffs to be on my road. He missed each one, and suddenly we both felt sedated with a very heavy feeling in our abdomens. He looked at me and said, "We are going to save its life." I looked at him and didn't have the faintest idea of what he was talking about. We ended up on Highway 36 going towards Laysan Park. He stopped the car and a loud series of 3 electronic-sounding beeps came from the rear of his car. The next day we discovered a perfect round circle where the car's paint and primer were gone, only shiny steel. We walked up a snowbank, and under a bright full moon, with it being made brighter by the snow, my eyes adjusted, and at the distance of less than 50 feet, I saw an 8 to 9 foot hairy creature. It was so close I could see its fur was brown with silver tips. This is only a part of an ongoing UFO investigation, and the aliens were working with 2 Bigfoot my friend and I later saw at the same time. My friend and I both encountered a Bigfoot in the snow. Since this is also a part of an abduction, just after I saw the Bigfoot, I had missing time experience. When I next regained consciousness, we, being myself, my traveling companion, the 2 Bigfoot, and 4 small humanoids with large heads and eyes, they stood 3 to 4 foot tall. The Bigfoot, my companion, had seen the 2 of the small men escort him to the left toward the round disc-like object, while the remaining members of the group of Bigfoot and 2 small men escorted me to the right, where there also was another disc-like object. I turned in both nervousness and mild fright and asked, "Why are they taking him that way?" One of the small men turned and faced me and via telepathy conveyed to me, "He's different than you are." I again had missing time at this point, but I came aboard the disc. When I met back up with the evening's driver, he looked at me with excitement, bordering on zealousness, and said, "Aren't you glad we came? We saved its life." I was dumbfounded. I hadn't done anything like that. From the next time I saw him till this day, I asked him what happened to you that night. Furiously, he replied, "I will never talk about what happened that night ever. You never did with me." As to the location this occurred in California, the nearest town is Maglia, California. We had left Chico, California, for Highway 32, turned onto Highway 36, and eventually to Laysan Volcanic National Park. The road we were on was Highway 36, but the forest could have been either Laysan National Forest or Plumas National Forest, as they do run almost along each other, and it was night. We were off-road, so I'm not exactly sure where it was except along Highway 36. Some additional questions. After reading the additional correspondence from this individual, I admitted that this was the strangest Bigfoot encounter I'd ever heard. I then asked them some additional questions pertaining to their encounter/abduction. You stated he stopped the car and a loud series of 3 electronic beeps came from the rear of his car, and the next day you discovered a perfectly round circle where the car's paint and primer were gone and there was only shiny steel. Do you remember what part of the car had the circle? The hood, trunk, side, etc.? The spot was on the car's trunk, on the driver's side, almost to where it meets the back window. You stated you walked up a snowbank and under a bright full moon. Can you remember more about your surroundings? It was an open field. Was the terrain hilly, flat, wooded? The terrain was wooded and rough to navigate on foot due to the trees and rocks covered in snow. I could hear distant running water, which I attributed to a creek, stream, or river. After a bit, the terrain had less rocks and trees, so navigation became much easier. You stated this was only part of an ongoing UFO investigation. Can you share some more? Who is or was investigating this encounter? Was it MUFON or another organization? The investigators said they were with a well-known civilian investigative group. Yet, in retrospect, I find it odd that all contact questioning was carried on over the phone. Neither my friend nor I ever met with the man in person, and it was the investigator that my friend, in his panicky phone call, said, "Don't talk to him anymore, he's with the government." It was right after this call that we were observed, followed by the black helicopters, so that part's unknown as neither of us ever met him. You stated I again had missing time at this point, but I came aboard the disc. Do you mean that you remember boarding the disc? Did the Bigfoot or other humanoids accompany you? Also, did you get a better look at the creatures as they walked with you toward the craft? No, I don't remember boarding the craft, only walking toward it. As far as observing those that accompanied me, the 2 small 3.5 to 4 foot beings, I could clearly see. The large hairy being I could only see out of the peripheral vision. It was 8 or 9 feet tall, dark brown fur. I felt like my neck and head were paralyzed, and I couldn't move it to the right or left much. You stated, when I met back up with the evening's driver, he looked at me with excitement bordering on zealousness and said, "Aren't you glad we came? We saved its life." The evening's driver, was this your friend that you were with? Also, how did you meet up with him? What was the last thing you remember after the encounter? The driver was my friend. We met back up coming from the trees we had stopped at to relieve ourselves at the beginning of this event. We walked from our trees back down to the car. The last thing I recall was getting into the car, and as we were on our way down Highway 36, these bright orange glowing spheres filled his windshield. The ball would be at the center, and bright orange light, almost flame-like, emitted around the orb. The first one flew by, and then what seemed to 3 or 4 minutes went by, and another orange orb and light flew by his windshield. Do you or your friend that night still communicate, or does then friend mean you are no longer in contact? We, my friend and I, are no longer in contact, purely from neither party being in contact with each other. The witness also stated in this correspondence, "I must admit that this is the strangest thing that has happened to me in my life. After this occurred, I did some looking into UFO phenomenon, and a famous UFOologist said that when looking into UFO reports, that there were some cases that had a high weirdness factor. When I did a simple Google search for aliens and Bigfoot, it showed 2 books, made reference to an old episode of Ancient Aliens, and there were other sites, and you could tell they were sites that have little to do with aliens and Bigfoot together. So I told you that was a strange but fascinating encounter. It was an interview, actually, that was done, and this guy and his friend apparently had been looking into UFO phenomenon prior to this night, and who they were saving, or who his friend thought they were saving, still remains a mystery to this day. Could it have been another Bigfoot-like creature, or another alien, or another human? Who knows? Fascinating, because there are so many different variables to it. You know, you don't know who or why or what. There's so many different things that had happened that night, which is absolutely mind-blowing. So, today's second encounter. Within the past 2 or 3 years, I put pieces together from my childhood and concluded that the creature we all feared when we were kids, which we simply named the thing in the woods, was in fact a Bigfoot. There were so many similarities to a lot of incidences and descriptions that I've heard from researchers and eyewitness accounts. I also looked up sighting reports and could not believe it when I saw that in my area, Western PA, was a literal hotbed of activity, and I can commiserate with others. Having something like this lurking in our home area is terrifying, especially as kids. I remember these occurrences really didn't start happening until I was around 11 and my sister was 8. I remember when we first acknowledged our thing to a couple of our cousins when they were visiting for a day. We were sitting on my Gram's porch, who lived next door to us in a rural area. It was going to start getting dark in about an hour or so, and we started getting nervous. Our cousins kept asking why we were saying we had to go down home before it got dark. We finally told them that there was something that would come through the woods after dark that sounded like a freight train and broke tree branches, and I guess this was the vital clue that stunk awful. The best way to describe it then was like burning rubber. That's when my older cousin very calmly but matter-of-factly simply said, "Oh, well, it sounds like you have the thing in the woods here too." We were shocked and asked what he meant. He recalled a story he had heard his dad and uncle talk about to their wives the previous hunting season. About 2 or 3 hours from our place this was. They always went deer hunting and in the summer went fishing. They had this little tin trailer they brought for the property that was about a couple of hours from their home. They had it for only about 3 years. He said that this past hunting season they cut their trip early, coming home after only 3 days. And they got home at some crazy hour in the morning because they had left in the middle of the night to come home. Their reason was the following. My cousin said that his dad and uncle had been up at camp and everything seemed normal at first, though it seemed that there were fewer deer this season. Populations changed, so they didn't think anything of it. The first night they were there, one of them thought they kept hearing tree breaks while he was out relieving himself, but thought nothing of it since there were bear up there as well. Trees can break naturally and fall. That night they slept well, but when they left in the morning, they saw some odd pine cones and a couple of small rocks around their trailer. They couldn't figure out where they had come from. The second night they both heard pinging on the roof in the back of the trailer that sounded like a really heavy big hail. It only happened randomly, but it was enough to pique their interest. They looked outside but didn't see anything. They commented that they smelled something awful, like a skunky type of smell. It was my cousin's uncle that said it reminded him of burning tires on asphalt in the heat of the summer. That's why when we said that, it tipped them off. Outside the next morning, they found more rocks behind the trailer. They climbed a ladder to the roof to see the rocks were on top. This definitely perplexed them, but they thought maybe it was stupid kids messing with them. So they hunted that day, and that final night, they were talking and listening to see if something would happen again. Sure enough, they heard large rocks hitting the back of the trailer. They went out with their guns and yelled to whoever it was to stop, that they had the right to protect their property and would do so, but the rocks kept coming. They went back out and smelled the awful odor again, very strong at this point. Then they heard what they described as a loud, powerful slap on the backside of the trailer. Now they were mad. They ran out again with their guns to confront the pranksters. They said that all they saw was a dent in the trailer, and as they panned their flashlight, they caught a glimpse of something large taking off through the tree line. They said it had dark fur like a bear, but they both saw it run upright like a person. They knew no one in a fake suit could move that stealthily or put that dent in the sidewall of their trailer. They went inside and one of them said, "We just saw a friggin' Bigfoot." They packed up their things and left within the hour, feeling very threatened. That was the last time they ever went to that property, so something terrified these lifelong hunters/woodsmen into giving up something they loved. Hearing that story made me a believer. We were terrified all through growing up of the thing in the woods, even to this day after more recent encounters. I'm just as scared and won't go there at night. And what truthfully solidified my belief that Sasquatch was around here is when I started to live with my ex, not living there now because he had passed away unexpectedly. He insisted that there was a Sasquatch coming around the property. He had weird habits as well, which made me feel as he was serious. He was very well-respected Army vet and active duty police officer. Now, as a bunch of you know that are been with the channel for a while, I love to share some scientific, historic facts. I just stumbled across this crazy article that I want to share with you. I shared the encounters of the, caves all throughout the country and South America that were dug not by man, but by something very large with claws, that they can't identify what did it. My discussion on the possible Neanderthal being a Dogman Sasquatch creature, because scientists have now proven that Neanderthal looked nothing like what we thought they did. This one is really fascinating, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. On a cold winter's day in 1980, a group of recreational cavers entered a narrow, wet stream passage south of Knoxville, Tennessee. They navigated a slippery mud slope and a tight keyhole through the cave wall, trudged through the stream itself, ducked through another keyhole, and climbed more mud. Eventually, they entered a high and relatively dry passage deep in the cave's dark zone, beyond the reach of external light. On the walls around them, they began to see lines and figures traced into remnant mud banks laid down long ago when the stream flowed at this higher level. No modern or historic graffiti marred the surface. They saw images of animals, people, and transformational characters, blending human characteristics with those of birds and those of snakes with mammals. Ancient cave art has long been one of the most compelling of these artifacts from human past, fascinating both to scientists and the public at large. Its visual expression resonates across the ages, as if the ancients speak to us from deep within time. And this group of cavers in 1980 had happened upon the first ancient cave art site in North America. Since then, archaeologists like myself have discovered dozens more of these cave art sites in the Southwest. We've been able to learn details about when cave art first appeared in the region, when it was most frequently produced, and what it may have been used for. We also learned a great deal by working with living descendants of the cave art makers, the present-day Native American people of the Southeast, about what the cave art means and how important it was to the indigenous communities. Cave art in America. Few people think of North America when they think about ancient cave art. A century before the Tennessee cavers made their own discovery, the world's first modern discovery of cave art was made in 1879 in northern Spain. The scientific establishment of the day immediately denied the authenticity of this site. Subsequent discoveries served to authenticate this and other ancient sites as the earliest expressions of human creativity, some perhaps 40,000 years old. European Paleolithic cave art is now justifiably famous worldwide. But similar cave art had never been found anywhere in North America, although Native American rock art outside of caves had been recorded since Europeans arrived. Artwork deep underground was unknown until 1980, and the Southeast was an unlikely place to find it given how much archaeology had been done there since the colonial period. Nevertheless, the Tennessee cavers recognized that they were seeing something extraordinary and brought archaeologist Charles Faulkner to the cave. He initially researched the project, naming the site Mudglyph Cave. His work showed that the art was from the Mississippian culture some 800 years ago and depicted imagery characteristic of ancient Native American religious beliefs. Many of those beliefs are still held by the descendants of the Mississippian people, modern Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole, among others. After the Mudglyph Cave discovery, archaeologists here at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, initiated systematic cave surveys. Today, we have cataloged 92 dark zone cave art sites in Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Kentucky, Virginia, and West Virginia. There are also a few sites known in Arkansas, Missouri, and Wisconsin. What did they depict? There are three forms of southeastern cave art. Mudglyph are drawings traced to a pliable mud surface preserved in caves like those from Mudglyph Cave. Petroglyphs are drawings directly into the limestone, and petroglyphs are paintings usually made with charcoal-based pigments placed on the cave walls. Sometimes more than one technique is found in the same cave, and none of the methods seem to appear earlier or later in time than the others. Some southeastern cave art is quite ancient. The oldest cave art sites date to some 6,500 years ago. During the Archaic period, 10,000 to 1000 BC, these sites are rare and seem to be clustered on the modern Kentucky-Tennessee state line. Imagery was simple and often abstract, although representational pictures do exist. Cave art sites increase in number over the time. The Woodland period, 1000 BC to AD 1000, saw more common and more widespread art production. Abstract art was still abundant and less worldly. Probably more spiritual subject matter was common during the Woodland. Conflicts between humans and animals, stuff like bird humans, made their first appearance. The Mississippian period, AD 1000 to 1500, is the last pre-contact phase in the southeast before Europeans arrived, and this was when much of the dark zone cave art was produced. Subject matter is clearly religious and indicates spirit, people, and animals do not exist in a natural world. There's also strong evidence that Mississippian art caves were compositions with images organized through the cave passages in systematic ways to suggest stories or narratives told through their locations and relations. In recent years, researchers have realized that cave art has strong connections to the historic tribes that occupied the Southeast at the time of the European invasion. In several caves in Alabama and Tennessee, mid-19th century inscriptions were written on a cave wall in Cherokee. This writing system was invented by a Cherokee scholar between 1800 and 1824 and was quickly adopted as the tribe's primary means of written expression. Cherokee archaeologists, historians, and language experts have joined forces with non-native archaeologists like myself to document and translate these cave writings. As it turns out, they refer to various important religious ceremonies and spiritual concepts that emphasize the sacred nature of caves, their isolation, and their connection to powerful spirits. These texts reflect similar religious ideas to those represented by graphic images in earlier pre-contact time periods. Based on all the rediscovery researchers have made since Mudglyph Cave was first explored more than 4 decades ago, cave art in the Southeast was created over a long period of time. These artists worked in ancient times when ancestral Native Americans lived by foraging in the rich natural landscape of the Southeast all the way through to the historic period just before the Trail of Tears saw the forced removal of indigenous people east of the Mississippi River in the 1830s. As surveys continue, researchers uncover more dark cave sites every year. In fact, 4 new caves were found in the first half of 2021. With each new discovery, the tradition is being to approach the richness and diversity of the Paleolithic art of Europe, where 350 sites are currently known. The archaeologists were unaware of dark zone cave art of the American Southeast. Even 40 years ago demonstrates the kinds of new discoveries that can be made even in regions that have been explored for centuries. Alright guys, I hope you all enjoyed this bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. Your support is honestly what makes this channel continue to grow and go, and what makes it special. A safe place for people to want to share their ideas, their theories, their experiences. And that is all because of you. Guys, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there, and they are dangerous. Share this information with the people you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for answers, and God bless.